What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Knicks with your host, Dylan Backer. And today I'm going to talk about a guy that, had an up and down start to the year, but has quietly been putting in a very consistent December. Mikal Bridges. He had that kind of rough start to the year, as I just mentioned. He was shooting barely 30% from three. Kind of had a lot of games where he just looked lost on both ends of the floor. But lately in the month of December, he's been really, really efficient on both sides. And against the Orlando Magic on Sunday, I think that was really one of his best games of the season, even though the numbers were not exactly eye-popping. I think the way he impacted the game on both sides of the ball was something that he hadn't really done all season, and was really one of the best games he had played. He finished with 17 points and he got a steal and a block, but what really stood out to me was his defense on Jalen Suggs. He held Jalen Suggs, to 4 of 19 shooting from the floor, one of his worst games of the season. Yes, I know the Orlando Magic were missing Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, but regardless, Jalen Suggs was going to be the guy, and everyone kind of knew that, and Mikal Bridges took on that task of having to guard him all game long, and he did a great job on him. And really, I think this is the kind of guy that we were expecting when we traded, 5 first-round picks for Bridges in the offseason. I made a video earlier this season saying that Bridges needed to step up, that he really kind of was not playing that well, because I think all of us know that he's had some kind of inconsistent moments this year. He's had games where he's looked pretty good, pretty efficient, and then some other games where he's kind of unplayable, where Deuce McBride is playing over him. And it's odd because Mikal Bridges actually does lead the NBA in minutes, so it's kind of strange to see that, there's been games where you kind of can't play him out there, but that was kind of the case at the start of the year. Now, though, he's been one of the most impactful players, not just on the Knicks, but in the NBA. And it sounds like a stretch to say, but he actually leads the NBA in plus minus this month. That is ahead of guys like Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum. That's ahead of everybody. It's literally top in the NBA, plus 94. So, Mikal Bridges has really been doing a great job on both sides of the ball. I'm really impressed with what he's been doing in this month of December. I was really impressed, though, what he did against Orlando, because like I said, yes, it was a shorthanded matchup that they were playing against, but, Mikal Bridges has kind of had his struggles on the defensive side this year. This is a guy who was first team all defense just a couple of years ago, by the way, with the Phoenix Suns. So it's kind of been alarming seeing him not be so good defensively, because we expected him to be, a very good perimeter defender, especially playing alongside OG Anunoby as well. We really thought that was going to be a fantastic duo. And while I do think it has the capability to be a fantastic duo, it's clear that they're not quite there just yet. They're still kind of trying to work their footing together a little bit, kind of figure out some chemistry on both sides of the ball. But I think Bridges is slowly starting to get into a groove and kind of really get comfortable with his role. I said it earlier this year, but his role is easily the one that changed the most out of every other Knicks player that's, came onto this team in the past year. OG Anunoby's taken on a much larger offensive role, Josh Hart as well, guys like that. But Karl-Anthony Towns' role didn't change a whole bunch. He's still kind of being the guy / number 2 guy, which is what he was in Minnesota. Jalen Brunson kind of has to take on a playmaking role this season, so that's a little bit different from him, but he is also still kind of the team's top option. He led the team in scoring last night with 31 points against the Orlando Magic. So, that kind of stuff, those guys, their role is different, but it's not drastically different. For Bridges, it's massively different. He just went from being, the top guy in Brooklyn for about a year and a half, kind of having to take over the scoring load and take over everything, to kind of now having to try to kind of draw back to that what he was in Phoenix when he was playing alongside Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. He's kind of got to go back to what that role looked like a little bit, but also being capable of scoring offensively at the same time. So it's kind of like a mix of both roles, if that makes sense, which is it's kind of weird to say it that way, but he's kind of got to try to figure it out. Where does he exactly belong in this offense? Because, there's so many different mouths to feed with this Knicks team, right? It seems like every single night that all 5 starters are scoring in double figures, and Deuce McBride's adding an additional 10 off the bench. So it seems like they're a very balanced scoring attack, right? Even though occasionally you got Brunson with 30 points last night, sometimes you'll get a 30 ball from Towns or a 40 piece from Towns even. Most nights it's gonna seem like that they're kind of all just splitting up the scoring evenly, right? So Bridges kind of has to figure out where exactly he fits with that. Where is he going to get his shots? Where is he going to, find ways to play make and stuff like that, facilitate, lead the offense? So far, though, I think he's really starting to figure it out. And even though, his playmaking numbers are a little bit down, I do think he's been making impactful plays, driving with the ball, on, taking people to the rack on the ball, as well as being a catch-and-shoot spot-up threat, and also cutting off the ball as well. I think he's been really effective, with the ball and without the ball, which is something you really want from him. You don't want him to be ball dominant. You don't want him to be too ball heavy or anything like that. You want him to be able to impact the game in different ways. You don't want to take your touches away from Jalen Brunson or Karl-Anthony Towns. And Bridges Bridges isn't doing that. He's letting them to kind of operate the offense, let them work their thing. At that point, it's just a matter of Bridges making his shots, which in the early part of the season was kind of a struggle. He was hitting the corner threes very well, but the above the break threes are still one of his worst marks in, right now this season, and of course one of the worst marks in the NBA, which is obviously an alarming concern. It's definitely something to kind of, keep an eye on and hope that it kind of fixes itself as the season goes on. But if you look at Bridges' numbers overall this season, I mean, they're pretty solid. 17 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.2 assists. He's averaging a steal per game as well. 33% from the field, not from the field, from three, and 48% from the floor. And he leads the NBA in minutes. These aren't like, they're not 5 first-round pick worthy stats, and I think everyone can agree with me when I say we definitely overpaid for Bridges, but that's kind of the point when you make an all-in move. Sometimes you just got to overpay for pieces that can get you to where you need to be, and I do think the Knicks are confident that Bridges can be a crucial piece to a championship contender. I know there's been a lot of different mock trades already being proposed that involve Bridges, which, I don't really understand it unless it's for a true upgrade, because, Bridges is a good player in his own regard, and I do think he can fit on this team. I don't think he's necessarily a bad fit. I do think he fits well in this team. I think he just needs to kind of adapt to his role a little bit. We're only 26 games into the season. On one side you can look at it and go, well, that's a fourth of the way through. But on the other side you can look at it and go, well, it's not even 30 games in. We're not even at Christmas yet. So, you kind of just got to give it some time. This is kind of the bonding year for the Knicks. This is going to take some time for these guys to kind of gel and really play well together. Look at the teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Boston Celtics, the Houston Rockets even. Teams like that have been together for quite a while. They have. Even the Denver Nuggets too. That's another team. Those teams have been together for a while. They've had their pieces together for quite some time. And then they ended up being successful years on. I'm not saying that the Knicks are going to end up only being good 4 years from now. No. But I will say that to kind of expect this team to be, a brand new team to instantly go to the NBA Finals, that's a tall task. That's a lot to ask for. Obviously, my expectation is to at least reach the Eastern Conference Finals, and I do think that is the step you have to take. But of course, I'm kind of just scoping out a little bit way into the future. But I think it's a conversation to be had because, we know how good these guys are individually, talent-wise. We know how good Jalen Brunson is, OG, Mikal, Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart. We know how good all of those guys are individually. We know that those guys are very good players. But it's a matter of how well they play together because now they're going to all be on the floor at the same time. I even saw this year that they've had the most possessions together as a 5-man lineup. They have a 6.6 net rating together as well, which is very good, by the way. That is very good. It's not the best in the NBA, but it's one of the best, and it's a very good net rating. So I'm okay with that. I think really at the end of the day, these guys are just still forming chemistry. We're still seeing the process kind of work through. I want them to be more consistent. Yes, I've been begging for that all season long. But just being honest here, part of having a new team is part of going through the growing pains and watching these guys have to have some nights where they look unstoppable and then some nights where they can't hit a shot or they can't defend a parked car. It happens. It's going to happen that way. There's going to be nights like that. There's going to be games that frustrate us. There's going to be games that we really look at this team and go, oh, these guys are finals contenders. These guys are going to beat anybody. I still am confident that this team can beat anybody. I do think they can. And I know I'm talking about it as they just beat a very depleted Orlando Magic squad, but that Orlando Magic squad also, by the way, was third in the East before we took it over, and they also had not lost a game at home until yesterday. They had not lost a single game at home. I do think that is important to mention that as well. No matter who the Magic are playing, they are a very tough opponent. They have very good defenders, very good young offensive players as well. Last night they were, just couldn't hit a single shot. They're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. Good teams take advantage of that. They take advantage of teams that can't shoot. You don't let these bad shooting teams have good shooting nights. We've seen them kind of do that a couple times this year. When they faced the Utah Jazz earlier this year, the Jazz are one of the worst teams in the NBA period, but also one of the worst shooting teams in the league, and the Knicks let them shoot the lights out. And Bridges had a rough game in that one, and look what happened. They ended up losing by 20, and then Bridges last night has a solid game against Orlando. They win by 9 points, but they win pretty comfortably. Bridges does his thing on both ends of the floor. He doesn't let the other guys on the Magic kind of go off and really light it up from three. I know Mo Wagner had a decent game from three-point range, but he was kind of the only guy on that team that was really getting going. The goal in the game yesterday was to kind of not let Jalen Suggs take over because he was easily the next best threat with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero out. So I thought Bridges did a fantastic job. I think he's done a very good job in the month of December overall. He's averaging 21 points per game in December on pretty good efficiency, 52% from the floor, 42% from three, or 54% from the field, excuse me. But regardless, very, very solid month from him. I do think we're starting to kind of see him get comfortable. I think we're starting to really see him kind of gel with the rest of these guys. I do think he's figuring out his role in a much better way, which is huge for the Knicks. It really is, because Bridges was kind of supposed to be like that third option, and for the first month of the season, OG was kind of being that third option. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever, OG has taken such a huge scoring leap this season. Asking OG Anunoby to take on such a big scoring responsibility when you really need his defense, yeah, that's a sacrifice, and it can be a costly sacrifice if you really ask for him to, provide much more offensively, because then you run the risk of him getting injured from exerting himself so much, and all this other stuff can fall apart. And it has nothing to do with Anunoby himself as the player, because I do think he's a great player, but I do think the Knicks would be a lot more comfortable if it was Brunson and Towns and then Bridges running the show instead of Brunson, Towns, and then Anunoby. I think they would rather Bridges take on a much larger offensive role and kind of sacrifice a little bit of the defense, just because Bridges is a lot more versatile offensively. He's a lot better of a shot creator from all three levels of the floor. He's supposed to be a very good three-point shooter. Obviously, I know this year it's been kind of up and down from him, but he's supposed to be this knockdown shooter. He's also good in the mid-range. He's able to play make as well. He can run with the second unit. There's a lot more versatility with Mikal Bridges than there is with OG Anunoby, and that's why I think the Knicks want to be able to kind of have Mikal be that third option. So if he's able to take on a scoring leap and actually take some responsibility offensively and create shots for not only himself but for the other guys, that goes a long way for the Knicks. They can really be something special. This offense has already been one of the top teams in the entire NBA. They're a top 3 offense overall. They're one of the best offenses that I've ever seen from this Knicks team. It's probably one of the best offenses the Knicks have ever had as a franchise already, and we're only 26 games in, but that's besides the point. I think Bridges at this point, if he continues to play like this, then the Knicks will look good for making that trade. They will, because I know that trade has been getting a lot of criticism just for how Bridges was performing throughout the first 20 games of the season or so. I know it wasn't very good, and I know giving up 5 first-round picks for basically a role player seems like a lot, and I do agree that it is a lot, and I think everyone will agree, like I said earlier, that it is an overpay. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's not an overpay. It definitely is an overpay. But it's something you got to do when you are confident that he can give you a championship. He can kind of be that missing piece to the puzzle. And I do think if Bridges keeps playing like this, then he will be that missing piece to the puzzle. But I don't really have much else to say about Bridges. I think really this is kind of just something I wanted to talk about because not much has been going on with the Knicks lately. They've been still playing pretty well overall. I know they dropped a game against Atlanta, and they had some, that bad loss against the Pistons. The free throw woes were kind of killing them a little bit, but I do think that, these tough stretches are going to happen. It's a matter of how you bounce back from them. I think the Knicks responded nicely from that loss at home against Atlanta to get them out of the NBA Cup, and they responded nicely with a road win against the Magic, and now they have a couple more days off before they have a pretty marquee matchup coming up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. First matchup in the regular season since the Karl-Anthony Towns trade that also saw Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo go the other way. And I think a lot of us remember what happened in the preseason with DiVincenzo, so that'll definitely be a must-watch, but we'll get to that at some point later on this week. But guys, I don't have much else to say about Bridges or anything else in this video, so I do think this is a good place to wrap it up. Let us know what you guys think about Mikal Bridges in the comment section below, because I think he's had a good stretch lately. I think he's starting to really figure out his role, and I really hope you guys also feel the same way about Bridges. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page that you are watching the video on. You can follow my personal Twitter account. It's right there on the screen, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.